Today we're going to examine 5 hunters whose wilderness pursuits ended in tragedy. From a waterfowl hunter's fatal encounter in Zambia to a contractor's deadly confrontation with a black bear in North Carolina. But first we venture into Montana's Gallatin National Forest, where one experienced bow hunter's approach to a grizzly's cache turned an elk hunt into a nightmare. It was October 14, 2016, in the remote wilderness of Gallatin National Forest, Montana, where towering pines cast long shadows across rugged terrain that had remained unchanged for centuries. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine needles and the distant promise of winter, while golden aspen leaves danced in the mountain breeze like nature's confetti. This was prime elk country, where experienced hunters came to test their skills against one of North America's most challenging game animals in some of the most unforgiving wilderness on the continent, far from civilization's safety net. Drexel Pomp, a 42-year-old diesel mechanic and a hunter from Wyoming, had been making this annual pilgrimage for 6 consecutive seasons, alongside his hunting partners, Todd Renshaw, a 45-year-old electrician, and Clay Morton, a 39-year-old warehouse supervisor. The trio had developed an almost ritualistic approach to their Montana elk hunts, carefully scouting the same drainage system year after year with methodical precision. Drexel's weathered hands and keen eye for tracking had earned him respect among his peers as a skilled bow hunter who understood the mountains intimately and could read animal sign with remarkable accuracy. However, 2016 presented unusual challenges that would test even experienced hunters like Drexel and his companions. The summer's poor berry crop had forced grizzly bears to seek alternative food sources, making them more defensive around food caches as they desperately prepared for winter hibernation. Fresh claw marks scarred nearby trees like territorial warnings, and overturned logs revealed the telltale signs of bears foraging for sustenance before winter's arrival. Despite these warnings scattered throughout their hunting area, the hunters remained committed to their chosen hunting ground, drawn by the promise of trophy elk in this secluded basin where few other hunters ventured. 300 yards from their glassing ridge, they discovered a partially buried elk carcass, its remains hastily covered with dirt and brush, the unmistakable signature of a grizzly bear's food cache that would soon become a death trap. Grizzly bears are among North America's most formidable animals, capable of reaching speeds of 35 miles per hour and possessing bite forces exceeding 1,200 pounds per square inch that can crush bone. These massive omnivores, weighing up to 800 pounds, become extremely territorial when defending cached food sources, viewing any intrusion as a direct threat and reacting with explosive defensive aggression. Their powerful claws, measuring up to 4 inches long, can tear through flesh with devastating efficiency. Drexel made the fatal decision to approach the carcass alone, leaving his bear spray attached to his backpack rather than mounting it on his chest for immediate access. As he stepped within 20 yards of the cache, breaking the invisible boundary of safety, a massive grizzly exploded from the surrounding brush, covering the distance in seconds in a defensive charge meant to drive away the perceived threat. The bear's initial charge knocked Drexel to the ground with devastating force. Its powerful forelimbs struck him like a sledgehammer, followed immediately by razor-sharp claws that tore through the soft tissue on the left side of his face, exposing bone beneath torn flesh. The grizzly's massive jaws clamped down across his face and jaw, fracturing facial bones with sickening precision. The bear shifted its grip during the mauling, its teeth tearing deeper through muscle while its weight pinned Drexel helplessly against the ground. Severe facial trauma ruptured major blood vessels along the neck, including damage near the carotid and jugular, while repeated blows from the bear's forelimbs drove his head violently against the rocky soil. Blood quickly filled his airway as swelling and trauma compromised his breathing, and the relentless assault caused severe, blunt cranial trauma that left him rapidly losing consciousness. Even after the attack slowed, the damage had already been catastrophic. Within the next minute or two, massive blood loss and airway compromise caused Drexel to collapse, his body no longer able to sustain the trauma inflicted during the violent defensive encounter. Only when Drexel's body went completely still did the grizzly finally disengage, disappearing back into the wilderness as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only silence and tragedy. Investigators later concluded the death likely resulted from catastrophic blood loss, airway obstruction, and blunt head trauma sustained during the mauling, transforming a routine hunting expedition into a nightmare that would haunt his companions forever. Authorities launched an immediate investigation, ultimately determining the attack was a defensive response to perceived threat near a food cache. The incident sent shockwaves through the hunting community, prompting renewed discussions about bear safety protocols in grizzly country and proper food cache identification techniques. Drexel's tragic encounter with Montana's apex predator served as a stark reminder of nature's unforgiving power and the thin line between hunter and hunted in the wilderness. But halfway across the world, Lorraine Vex would soon discover that Africa's waterways harbored their own ancient killers, where a simple mistake near the water's edge could prove equally fatal. It was August 21st, 2017, along the murky waters of the Zambezi River in Zambia, where ancient currents carved through the African landscape, carrying secrets of countless predators lurking beneath the surface like living nightmares. The dawn air hung thick with humidity and the earthy scent of river mud, while reeds swayed gently in the morning breeze that carried whispers of danger across the water. Warning signs posted upstream served as grim reminders that these waters harbored some of Africa's most dangerous inhabitants. Yet the promise of exceptional waterfowl hunting continued to draw adventurous souls to these treacherous banks where death waited patiently. Lorraine Vex, a 34-year-old agricultural consultant from Namibia, had traveled to this remote section of the Zambezi with her husband Peter, a 38-year-old experienced duck hunter who knew these waters well and understood their reputation. The couple had planned this hunting expedition for months, drawn by reports of abundant waterfowl congregating along the reed-lined margins during the dry season when birds gathered in unprecedented numbers. However, the recent drought had dramatically altered the river's ecosystem, concentrating both prey and predators into increasingly smaller areas of remaining water, where competition for territory had reached deadly levels. Fresh slide marks scarred the muddy banks where massive reptiles had recently hauled themselves from the water, leaving behind evidence of their presence like signatures written in mud and terror. Experienced locals had warned that the dry season was forcing crocodiles into aggressive competition for territory, transforming previously safe hunting grounds into death traps. The shrinking channels meant that what had once been safe hunting grounds now teemed with concentrated populations of Nile crocodiles, each defending their diminishing domain with lethal determination. Despite these warnings, the Vex couple remained committed to their planned hunt, positioning themselves near a shallow reed bank where ducks typically gathered at first light. The morning hunt had proceeded successfully, with several birds falling to their skilled marksmanship as the sun climbed higher over the African wilderness, casting golden reflections across the deceptively calm water. Nile crocodiles are among Africa's most formidable apex predators, capable of remaining motionless underwater for up to an hour while waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike with explosive violence. These ancient killing machines can grow up to 20 feet in length and possess bite forces approaching 3,700 pounds per square inch, making them one of the most powerful predators on Earth, with jaws capable of crushing bone. Their hunting strategy relies on explosive ambush attacks from concealed positions, often targeting prey that ventures too close to the water's edge, where safety becomes an illusion. Lorraine made the fatal decision to wade into knee-deep water to retrieve a downed bird that had fallen among the reeds, breaking the cardinal rule of crocodile country. The couple had failed to scan the murky water for submerged movement, a critical oversight in crocodile-infested waters, where death lurked invisibly. As she bent forward to grasp the fallen duck, focusing on her prize rather than potential threats, a massive 14-foot Nile crocodile erupted from its submerged position with terrifying speed. The crocodile's powerful jaws clamped onto her lower leg with bone-crushing force that immediately fractured the tibia and fibula, snapping the bones like dry branches. Before Lorraine could react or comprehend what was happening, the massive reptile began pulling her toward deeper water with irresistible strength. Maintaining its grip on the shattered leg, the crocodile surged backward into deeper water, dragging her off balance and beneath the surface. Once submerged, the predator initiated its signature death roll, a violent rotational maneuver designed to disorient prey and cause devastating trauma while ensuring no escape was possible. The spinning motion violently twisted Lorraine's already broken leg as the crocodile rotated through the water, using the river itself as leverage to overpower her struggling body. During the rolling motion, the crocodile's grip shifted higher along her leg toward the upper thigh, where immense pressure from its jaws damaged major blood vessels while forcing her underwater. Water flooded into her lungs each time the reptile dragged her beneath the surface, while the violent spinning caused additional skeletal injuries and extreme disorientation. The relentless predator maintained its grip throughout the attack, demonstrating millions of years of evolutionary perfection in seconds. The attack ultimately proved fatal through forced submersion and catastrophic trauma, as Lorraine was repeatedly pulled underwater, while the crocodile's crushing bite prevented escape. The ancient killer then stored Lorraine's body beneath a submerged root structure, following its instinctual behavior of caching prey for later consumption. Zambian wildlife authorities launched an immediate investigation into the attack, while local communities expressed renewed concerns about crocodile populations along popular hunting areas. The incident highlighted the increasing dangers posed by concentrated predator populations during drought conditions, prompting discussions about enhanced safety protocols for river activities. The fatal encounter between Lorraine and the river's top predator reinforced a harsh truth: African waters demand unwavering respect. Meanwhile, far across the continent, Solly Krant prepared for a perilous wildlife encounter, unaware that the dense Mopane brush concealed one of Africa's most volatile and dangerous animals. It was July 19, 2017, in the dense forests of Primorsky Krai, in Russia's Far East, where towering Korean pine and oak trees formed a labyrinth of shadows shaped by centuries of predator-prey encounters. The humid summer air clung to the forest floor, while shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy, casting shifting patterns across the undergrowth. Cicadas droned in the heavy air, blending with the distant creaking of branches stirred by a slow forest wind. This was tiger country, one of the last strongholds of the Siberian tiger, where the world's largest cat moved silently through vast stretches of untamed forest. Because the species is strictly protected in Russia, hunting activity here is tightly regulated and conducted only through licensed concessions operating under wildlife oversight. Hunting demanded patience, discipline, and respect for the apex predators that ruled these ancient lands. Solly Krant, a 51-year-old property investor and hunter from Texas, had traveled halfway across the world for a remote expedition in Russia's wilderness. His trip had been arranged through a licensed Russian outfitter operating a managed wild boar concession in Primorsky Krai. Accompanying him was Sergei Makarov, a 46-year-old Russian hunting guide and local woodsman who had spent most of his life navigating the forests of the Far East. His weathered face and cautious demeanor reflected decades spent working in terrain, where hunters were never the only predators moving through the trees. The pair had spent 3 days tracking wild boar through the thick forest, following hoofprints pressed into damp soil as the trail led deeper into terrain that favored the animals they pursued. Foreign hunters were required to remain with licensed guides in these concessions, particularly in regions overlapping with tiger territory. But the forest held more than boar. Local rangers had recently reported signs of a large Siberian tiger moving through the same valley. Some believed the animal had been injured during a territorial fight with another male, making it unusually aggressive and unpredictable. Wounded tigers are known for their patience, often circling silently through dense forest before launching sudden ambushes against anything entering their territory. Despite the quiet warnings around camp, Solly remained focused on the hunt ahead. The morning began with fresh tracks leading into thick undergrowth where fallen timber, tangled shrubs, and young pine reduced visibility to only a few yards. Even the forest felt unnaturally quiet, as though the wildlife sensed something dangerous moving through the trees. A faint smell of damp earth and decaying leaves lingered in the air, as Solly stepped carefully over fallen branches, unaware that unseen eyes were already studying his movements. Siberian tigers are the largest cats in the world, with massive males weighing well over 500 pounds. Built for power rather than speed, these solitary predators possess enormous forelimbs, razor-sharp claws, and jaws capable of crushing bone. In the forests of Russia's Far East, they sit at the top of the food chain, capable of bringing down prey as large as elk and wild boar. When injured or cornered, their caution can transform into explosive aggression. Solly made the fatal mistake of advancing into the thick brush ahead of his guide, breaking the cardinal rule of dangerous game hunting that had been repeated throughout the expedition. In his eagerness to close the distance on what he believed were boar moving through the brush, he failed to reload after firing his first shot. The dense vegetation reduced visibility to under 15 yards, creating perfect conditions for an ambush. The wounded tiger had been waiting silently within the shadows, its striped body perfectly concealed against the forest floor. As Solly stepped through the undergrowth, the massive predator erupted from cover with terrifying speed. The tiger lunged forward in a blur of orange and black, its powerful forelegs slamming into Solly's chest as its jaws clamped onto his shoulder and neck. The force drove him hard into the ground as the tiger's immense weight pinned him beneath its body. Razor claws tore across his torso while the predator tightened its crushing grip. Powerful hind legs raked downward as the tiger maintained its lethal hold. Moments later, the predator delivered a final crushing bite to the throat, severing major arteries as Solly's strength rapidly faded beneath the animal's overwhelming power. Blood darkened the forest floor as the encounter ended within minutes. Death occurred quickly from catastrophic blood loss, and traumatic injuries that no medical intervention could have reversed in such a remote wilderness. Authorities later investigated the fatal encounter, documenting the incident because of the involvement of a protected Siberian tiger. The international hunting community was reminded once again of the unforgiving risks that accompany wilderness hunting in predator territory. The incident renewed discussions about strict safety protocols and the importance of never ignoring an experienced guide when traveling through regions inhabited by apex predators. What happened to Solly underscored a grim lesson. In the wilderness, predator and prey can trade places in a heartbeat. Far away in Colorado's San Juan Mountains, Babbitt Glint tracked her quarry, unaware that North America's stealthiest hunter was already watching from above. It was November 3, 2018, high in the rugged San Juan Mountains of Colorado, where jagged peaks pierced the sky and ancient forests clung to steep slopes that had remained unchanged for millennia. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine and the promise of winter, while golden aspen leaves carpeted the forest floor like nature's warning of the harsh season ahead. This was prime mule deer country, where experienced hunters came to test their skills against one of North America's most challenging game animals in terrain that demanded both physical endurance and unwavering vigilance. Babbitt Glint, a 29-year-old wildlife photographer turned hunter, had made the transition from capturing animals through a lens to pursuing them with bow and arrow. Her background in wildlife photography had given her an intimate understanding of animal behavior, but hunting presented entirely different challenges that required constant awareness of predator-prey dynamics. She had chosen to hunt solo in this remote section of the San Juans, drawn by reports of trophy mule deer bucks that frequented the high country during late season. Earlier that day, Babbitt had discovered a partially covered deer carcass hidden beneath brush and debris, the unmistakable signature of a large predator's cache. Mountain lions commonly store their kills under natural cover, returning repeatedly to feed over several days. Fresh tracks in the soft earth around the cache indicated recent activity, yet the allure of hunting in an area with abundant deer sign proved too tempting to abandon. The steep terrain and thick timber created perfect stalking conditions for both hunter and the apex predators that called these mountains home. As evening approached, Babbitt positioned herself on an exposed rock ledge that offered commanding views of the drainage below, unaware that her elevated position had made her visible to eyes that had been watching from above. Mountain lions are North America's most efficient stealth predators, capable of stalking prey with near-total silence across broken terrain. Large males can exceed 150 pounds in Colorado and possess the ability to leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally more than 30 feet in a single bound. Their retractable claws and powerful hindquarters make them perfectly adapted for ambush hunting, while keen eyesight and acute hearing allow them to detect subtle movement at distance. They prefer to attack from above or behind, using momentum and body weight to knock prey off balance before securing a suffocating bite to the throat or a crushing hold at the base of the skull. Babbitt made the fatal mistake of sitting on the exposed ledge with a blind rear angle, removing her backpack that contained her sidearm and placing it several feet away. Most critically, she failed to scan the elevated ridge behind her position, leaving herself completely vulnerable to an attack from above. The mountain lion had been stalking her movements for over an hour, positioning itself on the rocky outcrop directly above her location. The cat launched from the ridge above, covering the distance in a single silent leap that gave Babbitt almost no time to react. The impact of concentrated muscle and bone drove her forward off the ledge, sending both predator and prey tumbling down the rocky slope. Before she could orient herself, the mountain lion secured its killing grip around her throat with practiced precision. Its jaws clamped down with crushing force, canine teeth sinking deep into the musculature of her neck as the cat anchored with its hind claws. Rather than slicing cleanly through major vessels, the bite compressed the carotid arteries and jugular veins, cutting off blood flow to the brain while simultaneously collapsing her trachea. The pressure obstructed her airway and restricted cerebral circulation at the same time. Loss of consciousness from carotid compression can occur in seconds. Babbitt's movements became disorganized, then weak, as oxygen deprivation and reduced blood flow took effect. The lion maintained steady pressure, adjusting its grip to keep her pinned against the uneven ground and using its body weight to prevent escape. With her airway compromised and cerebral perfusion critically reduced, her resistance faded rapidly. The predator held fast until all movement ceased, relying on suffocation and vascular compression rather than catastrophic blood loss. Death resulted from asphyxia compounded by sustained carotid artery compression, a method consistent with how mountain lions dispatch large prey in the wild. Colorado Parks and Wildlife launched an investigation into the attack, while the hunting community expressed shock that such an incident could occur during daylight hours. The presence of the nearby deer cache explained the lion's defensive aggression, underscoring the risk of remaining near an active kill site during feeding cycles. Wildlife officials emphasized the importance of avoiding cached carcasses, maintaining 360-degree situational awareness, and keeping defensive tools immediately accessible in mountain lion habitat. Babbitt's tragic encounter served as a stark reminder that in predator country, a single lapse in awareness can reverse roles in an instant, and that apex predators rely not on frenzy, but on silent efficiency measured in seconds, shaped by instinct and evolutionary design. It was September 9, 2015, in the dense hardwood forests of Pisgah National Forest, North Carolina, where ancient mountains rolled like green waves across the Appalachian landscape. The crisp autumn air carried the earthy scent of fallen leaves and the distant promise of changing seasons, while towering oaks and maples created a cathedral of golden canopy overhead. This was prime white-tailed deer country, where experienced hunters came to pursue one of the East Coast's most prized game animals in terrain that had witnessed countless hunting seasons throughout generations of outdoor tradition. Moxon Dwale, a 37-year-old contractor from Tennessee, had traveled to these North Carolina mountains for his first hunting expedition in the region. Despite being an experienced hunter in his home state, Moxon was unfamiliar with the unique challenges presented by the Appalachian ecosystem during fall mast season. Earlier that morning, he had successfully harvested a mature whitetail buck, field dressing the animal approximately 200 yards from the main trail before leaving the gut pile in the traditional manner. However, this particular autumn presented unusual circumstances that Moxon could not have anticipated. The fall mast season had produced an abundant crop of acorns and nuts, drawing black bears into aggressive feeding patterns as they prepared for winter hibernation. Fresh bear tracks had been observed throughout the area, and experienced local hunters had noted increased bear activity around gut piles and carcasses. The combination of pre-winter feeding urgency and food defense behavior had made the region's black bear population more reactive than usual, transforming routine hunting practices into potentially deadly encounters. Moxon had left essential gear near the field dressing site and made the decision to return alone to retrieve his equipment, unaware that his gut pile had already attracted one of the forest's most powerful inhabitants. American black bears are North America's most widely distributed bear species, with adult males weighing up to 600 pounds and possessing surprising speed and agility. Despite their name, black bears can range in color from jet black to cinnamon brown, and they possess sharp curved claws capable of ripping through flesh with devastating efficiency. During fall feeding season, black bears enter hyperphagia, a biological state that drives them to consume massive quantities of calories before winter dormancy. Their bite force exceeds 800 pounds per square inch, and their forelimbs can deliver crushing blows strong enough to fracture bone. Moxon made the fatal mistake of returning to the gut pile alone, approaching from downwind where his scent did not carry ahead of him. Most critically, he failed to carry his firearm in a ready position, instead keeping it slung across his shoulder where rapid deployment would have been difficult in an emergency. As he neared the site, a large 300-pound black bear was actively feeding on the remains. The bear detected Moxon at close range and immediately perceived him as a threat to its food source. Black bears defending a carcass can react with sudden, explosive aggression when surprised. The animal charged from less than 20 yards away, covering the distance in seconds with startling speed that left virtually no time for effective defensive action. The bear's initial attack targeted Moxon's raised forearm as he instinctively brought his hands up to protect himself. Powerful jaws clamped down with crushing force, fracturing the radius and ulna, while teeth tore through muscle and connective tissue. The impact and forward momentum drove him to the ground, where he lost positional advantage. The bear then shifted its assault to the head and neck. Instead of a clean skull penetration, the bite crushed facial bones and caused severe cranial trauma. The force collapsed orbital structures and shattered the maxilla, while blunt compression transmitted through the skull produced traumatic brain injury. Simultaneously, the bear's jaws and forelimbs raked across the cervical region, compressing the airway and tearing deeply into the side of the neck. Critical blood vessels in the neck were lacerated during the mauling, resulting in rapid external hemorrhage. The combination of massive blood loss, airway compromise, and cervical trauma caused swift physiological collapse. Neurological function deteriorated rapidly as oxygen delivery to the brain was disrupted. The bear maintained its grip for several seconds, shaking violently in a predatory motion that compounded spinal and vascular damage. struggles weakened almost immediately. With catastrophic neck injury and uncontrolled hemorrhaging, loss of consciousness occurred quickly, and death followed within a short span, consistent with severe exsanguination and traumatic brain injury. The attack itself unfolded in well under a minute, but the injuries inflicted, crushing facial fractures, cervical vessel damage, airway compromise, and blunt cranial trauma, were catastrophic and irreversible. Officials launched an immediate investigation into the fatal bear attack, while local hunting communities expressed shock at the incident's proximity to popular hunting areas. The investigation determined the bear had been defending an active food source, reinforcing long-standing wildlife guidance about avoiding gut piles during peak bear feeding periods. Officials reiterated the importance of maintaining situational awareness, carrying firearms in a ready configuration, and exercising extreme caution in bear habitat during hyperphagia season. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.